Taking a hike today on the Chumash Trail in Los Osos, which is a state preserve, and I am up on top of the trail, and this is where an Indian village sat. And something I'm seeing is these stones which are fire blackened. So the Indians that lived here, probably Salinan tribe or similar, would heat up rocks to achieve a boil in baskets, and some of those rocks have washed out of the soil, probably from rain. They're just fire blackened, and we'll leave them here because they're an artifact. So this is all midden. We're on top of an ancient sand dune here. This is 94 acres, I think, preserve. So it's kind of encircled by roadway and a neighborhood. There's Hollister Peak way over there in the distance. You've seen that in some of my other videos. But they would gather seafood, clams, fish, things like that, and then they would wrap those items in lace lichen, which we see hanging over here in the oaks, and they would soak that lace lichen in seawater and then wrap the fish and stuff to keep it moist and cool, and then bring it back to camp and process it. And this is where they sat. It's the highest point in this area on top of this dune, and it gave them a good field of view for safety, so they could see if a bear was approaching, and then the men could go out and scrap with it, chase it off, or battle with it, probably using clubs and spears and their little light poundage bows. So here's an area. You can see it's getting thicker with shell fragments. Now we're probably, I don't know, a mile from the bay. So they would carry these back and process all these shells and clams for food to eat. They didn't have any refrigeration, so as hunter-gatherers, you had to eat it as you got it or lose it. And of course, every day was hard effort to process food. So that we're kind of up on a little bit of a peak here of the dune. I'm guessing their village, their temporary camp, probably sat up here on top of this. Just kind of walking around to see if we see anything else. Of course, we won't take any artifacts. We may look at them if we see anything. A lot of shell. Probably the ancient earth where they sat is covered over. Big smooth stone. Don't know that. Could have been used for something. It's very smooth. It's not exactly rounded for pounding, but it may just be a stone that's just here, not even used for anything. The other thing too is that these folks, they didn't use cemeteries or graveyards. You buried your dead right in camp. So they're probably native peoples buried right under our feet here, if they lost anyone. And the average life expectancy was not very long, probably in the late 20s or early 30s. It was a tough lifestyle, and injury, infections, and accidents, and illness could probably took a toll. It's kind of beautiful just to walk here in their footsteps and remember these people. And I think when we remember them, we honor them. To ignore them or not acknowledge them would be, I think, a wrong thing. I think we should respect and honor the memory of those first peoples. And they did a lot to help the Spanish missionaries when they got here. Of course, it was kind of a reciprocal relationship. Now we're looking back from where we just came. You can see we're a little bit of a hill right here. And I suspect probably up under all this chaparral is probably where the village sat on this highest peak, but we're not going to go in there and crush and trample the vegetation. We want it to grow and thrive. But now the mission locally, San Luis Obispo mission, was built between 1778 and 1791, and at its height there were 930 some odd native peoples working there. It was a kind of a reciprocal relationship. They gave labor, and in exchange they were getting regular food, a lot of better quality food, because the mission was raising cattle. At its height they had about 20,000 head of cattle, so they were getting beef and corn, and they had shelter. Each family had its own little adobe cottage, and they were learning trades and things like that. I know that a lot of native people talk about how their way of life was corrupted and destroyed, and it's true. They truly were. They lost their lifestyle, their skills, their primitive skills, as they became more and more immersed in the Spanish culture and language. They began to lose their identity and their religion, which was, I think you could say, was also monotheistic. They had a belief in a creator. Wasn't too far a stretch for the missionaries to pull them over into Christianity and convert them. So they did lose their traditions and cultures, and then in the 1820s, when ships started really coming to California and dropping people off, and the population started growing, is when it really got bad, because you had diseases coming in. In the 1790s, in the first couple of decades of the mission's existence, that wasn't occurring. But as more people came in and brought illness with them, these people, the native peoples, had no resistance to those diseases. Measles, there was 2 great big measles outbreaks in the mission that really took a toll. Here's another interesting plant, holly leaf cherry, and this has fruits on it. Not this time of year, but it's getting really nice and green. This plant here is thought to have come from the Channel Islands, and they think that the state park thinks that it might have been traded for. It's not supposed to really be here, and the fruits on this would have been used as an emetic for dealing with the constipative effects of the acorns that constituted such a large part of their diet. So this and coffee berry would have been primary. And we have some deer track. Pretty fresh, probably from last night. So we know that deer were a good source of meal for these folks. So just a little walk in here. Now we're walking down into the oaks. I see a bushy tail squirrel running around in here, a tree squirrel darting around among the oaks. I'm not sure whether these drop acorns. They're kind of a dwarf oak. Not sure they processed any acorns here. There's no bedrock mortars in here that I've ever seen. They could have had some portable stones for pounding, but they probably processed them closer to where they were harvesting them. Of course, they would follow the seasons and the yields of acorns as they found them, and when they would clean out an area, they'd move on to the next. It was a nomadic lifestyle. So just a little morning walk, and thought I'd share a little bit of my observations with you, and we will talk to you later.